Okay, guys, this is lesson 2 about chapter 6, the end of it. So we're talking about the decline of the Abbasids now, and one group that is going to actually be like a splinter cell of the Abbasid dynasty are the Buyids, and they're mostly from the Persian area. And what is going to happen with them is that they aren't going to really agree with what the Abbasids are doing as far as governing and how they're living their life, because they're straying away from, a Muslim lifestyle. The Abbasids were again becoming self-indulgent. They were actually getting into relationships with, the men. The men were getting into relationships with these concubines rather than their wives, and they're just getting, corrupted socially and politically. So anyway, the Buyids are going to take over certain areas of the Abbasid dynasty, and the Abbasid dynasty is going to start just fragmenting and becoming smaller and smaller. Now, another group that's going to come in are the Seljuk Turks. And the Seljuk Turks are, again, another splinter cell, another faction, and they're going to invade from the Russian steppe. And these folks are super into the military. They have this, religious zeal to them, and the Abbasids are kind of like old and tired. And they're going to come in, and the Seljuk Turks are going to dominate the Abbasids. And the Buyids and the Seljuk Turks, at one point or another, are going to come in, and they're going to make the Abbasids their puppets. Now, at the same time, you have this thing called the Crusades going on, where you have several factions going after the city of Jerusalem and trying to proclaim that land as their property and as their own. So you have the Christians coming in, both the Catholics and the Greek Orthodox. You have the Shia and the Sunni also partaking in the event of this Crusades. And as we study it later on in history, we're going to find that the Muslims are very successful at controlling this area versus these European Crusaders. So much so that the Crusaders of Europe get so desperate that they send children to try to get Jerusalem back. And we could all probably guess how that ended up. Now, here's the great thing about the Abbasids. They were, although they eventually declined and were not great, they contributed so much to the flourishing of science, math, literature, and it was mostly because they were able to preserve the Greek and Roman learning. They translated those texts, and they built on the foundation that the Greeks and Romans had already done. Something that maybe I did not mention earlier was that, again, in the beginning of this, many of the women in the Muslim communities, especially in these Iberian lands here, they were able to go to school. They were able to study certain aspects of learning. They were great poets. They wonderful musicians. Of course, they could not participate in the military, so they definitely were not seen as equal to men in that light. But they were definitely able to contribute more to society. Unfortunately, as time went on, women became more reclusive and were not able to go to school, were not able to participate in certain aspects of, socialization. And oddly enough, at the same time, slaves and concubines could go off and do that. So their husbands of these women, of the wives, the husbands became more interested in having conversations with the slaves and the concubines, and so they started having relationships with them rather than their own wives. And we're going to get later on into the spread of Islam, and it's going to make its way all the way to Southeast Asia here. That's our next chapter, chapter 7. And it's important to note that still to this day, you see Islam being very present in the lands of Africa, Northern Africa, and Southeast Asia, still to this day. What allowed Islam to spread mostly was the trade networks that were set up. The Indian Ocean Trade Network, the Arabian Network, and although there were other religions present in this area, such as Buddhism and Hinduism, Islam was still able to make its way through. And we've talked a lot about this in class as far as its appeal to the people. And it's the same as Christianity. Most of the time, we're seeing slaves and women and poor people looking at this new faith, whether it's Islam or Christianity, as something that could benefit them in their lives. So they're going to convert. And that's where we see terms such as the dhimmi or the mawali. Something else just to mention here, as far as the Indian Ocean Trade Network goes, what was happening there, which was pretty cool, was that the Jews, the Christians, and the Muslims were all working together as like a joint venture, pretty much, where they could all profit and participate in the trade at different times, because each one of them has a different Sabbath. So when one goes into their Sabbath, the other two can still participate and keep the business running. Anywho, the world that exists as far as the Ummah globally is called the Dar al-Islam, and this will help to further unite all types of Muslims. And this theory, or this unity, can date back to when Muhammad first started preaching about Islam. You had the Bedouin tribes that were fighting against each other, and Islam brought these Bedouin tribes together to help fight against, other empires that were out there, like the Sassanians or the Byzantine Empire. So that's pretty much it for the end of this that we didn't get to before the quarterlies because of those snow days that we loved so much from the 4-day weekend. Enjoy. I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck on your quarterlies, and that's it. Toodles.